Hip-hop has always been an evolving force, a shapeshifter that absorbs and reinvents whatever it touches. With every passing year, the genre stretches further, pulling in sounds from the past, present, and imagined futures. What began in the Bronx as a movement of raw expression has become a limitless canvas, blurring lines between high art and underground rebellion. Today, hip-hop no longer fits within a singular identity. It thrives in contrast, in the tension between the polished and the gritty, the synthetic and the organic. It exists as both a mirror and a distortion of the world around it, forever searching for new ways to defy expectations. One of the most striking evolutions in recent years has been the rise of electronic music within hip-hop, a meeting of the minds between avant-garde and anarchy. If you've been tapped into the underground scene lately, you've noticed the shift. The synths are colder, the energy's more theatrical, the beats hit like club records but still feel raw, and while it might feel new, this exact vibe already existed in the early 2000s as Electroclash. This current movement is not just a revival of sounds but a collision of subcultures, fusing the detached cool of European club scenes with the raw, visceral energy of rap. In this world, hip-hop becomes something almost alien, icy, futuristic, yet deeply primal. In 2025, artists like Tu Hollis and many more have come to the forefront, carving new paths through a culture many believed had long faded into nostalgia. Today, we will look at the world of Electroclash, tracing its lineage through the genre's legendary pioneers and cult icons, and exploring how hip-hop artists today are reimagining its sound, and with more visibility than ever. This is Beyond the Record. Emerging from the underground clubs of late 90s New York and Berlin, Electroclash resurrected the icy synth melodies of 1980s new wave, laced them with the relentless pulse of Detroit techno, and drenched it all in a punk-like rejection of the mainstream. Artificial yet rebellious, plastic yet provocative, Electroclash was both a mirror and a mockery of the hyper-consumerist world it inhabited. It reveled in irony, satirizing the excess and emptiness of celebrity, fashion, and commodified rebellion while simultaneously indulging in its aesthetic decadence. More than just a sound, it was a warped, neon-lit vision of the future, one that felt both eerily synthetic and intoxicatingly alive. The music itself was mechanical, sleek, and deliberately unpolished. Detached, robotic vocals slithered over rigid drum machines and jagged synth lines, stripping away sentimentality in favor of something colder, sharper. Electroclash thrived on tension, between control and chaos, glamour and grime. Miss Kittin and the Hacker spun deadpan monologues over pulsating bass lines like ghostly transmissions from a dystopian dance floor, while Fischerspooner transformed live performance into high-fashion absurdism. Peaches injected Riot Girl ferocity into stripped-down electro beats, turning explicit, confrontational lyricism into an act of sonic rebellion. But beyond the music, Electroclash was an art movement, a world of surrealist contradictions where sound, image, and ideology blurred into one. Its influence extends beyond its own era, its neon fingerprints smudged across the DNA of modern music, waiting for the next generation to distort and reimagine its legacy. Fischerspooner was a beautifully artificial dream born from the restless energy of late 90s New York. In a city where art bled into nightlife, where underground clubs felt like theater stages, Warren Fisher and Casey Spooner saw an opportunity to create something that defied definition. Fisher, a classically trained composer, brought precision and structure, while Spooner, a performer deeply embedded in the avant-garde, infused the project with theatricality. Their earliest shows were more like living installations than concerts. Synchronized dancers, extravagant costumes, surreal visuals, all drenched in a glossy neon haze. What began as an art experiment spiraled into something much larger, the pulse of a new movement, the face of Electroclash. They were sculpting a world where irony and glamour, digital and human, could exist in perfect, shimmering tension. Emerge 2001 became the battle cry of this world. Its jagged synth stabs and deadpan, hypnotic vocals weren't just infectious, they felt like an invitation into something sleek, futuristic, and untouchable. Fischerspooner understood that Electroclash was about presence, about the way music could be worn like fashion, about transforming the stage into a synthetic fantasy that blurred the line between nightclub and high art. And though Electroclash flickered and faded, its afterglow remains. Their influence can be felt in the glossy hyperreality of modern pop, in the digital surrealism of hyperpop and experimental hip-hop, in the way today's artists build worlds as much as they build songs. Fischerspooner was never meant to last forever, but their spirit, their perfect collision of chaos and control, continues to echo into the future. Peaches erupted from the underground like an electric jolt to the senses, a visceral, unapologetic force that shattered expectations and redefined the very fabric of electronic music. Born Meryl Nisker in Canada, she spent years navigating the indie and punk scenes before fully stepping into her own radical vision. Her early work was deeply DIY, crafted on a Roland MC505 groovebox with nothing but her own raw vocal presence and a fearless approach to performance. Unlike the cold, detached aesthetic that defined much of Electroclash, Peaches brought something primal and confrontational to the movement. Her music wasn't just electronic, it was sexual, rebellious, dripping with both humor and aggression. She embodied Electroclash's punk ethos in its purest form, proving that a drum machine and a voice could be just as powerful as a full band. She became a pioneer because she tore down barriers between genres, between gender norms, and between performer and audience. Where many Electroclash artists play with irony, Peaches wielded blunt force, delivering raunchy, feminist anthems over skeletal, pulsating beats. The Pain Away 2000 wasn't just a song, it was a statement, a manifesto of sexual liberation and raw self-expression that resonated far beyond her clubs. Her influence bled into punk, hip-hop, and pop alike, inspiring artists from M.I.A. to Charli XCX with her fearless minimalism and aggressive stage presence. She proved that electronic music didn't have to be polished or pristine, it could be filthy, sweaty, and alive. Today, her legacy is everywhere, in the transgressive energy of hyperpop, in the lo-fi grit of underground rap, in the way artists challenge taboos and redefine what it means to take up space. Peaches didn't just contribute to Electroclash, she embodied its rebellion, ensuring its influence would never fade. Miss Kittin and the Hacker surfaced from the underground like a specter from a lost era, their music an eerie fusion of futurism and nostalgia, an 80s nightclub resurrected in the flickering glow of a dying screen. Hailing from France, Caroline Herve, Miss Kittin, and Michael Amato, the Hacker, were drawn together by an obsession with the cold, mechanical pulse of early electronic music. Kraftwerk's robotic precision, the shadowy allure of new wave, the shimmering haze of Italo disco, and the raw edge of Detroit techno. But their sound wasn't born in pristine studios, it was forged in the sweat-drenched energy of European raves, where the past and future collided beneath the neon hum of strobe lights. From the start, their music carried an effortless cool. The Hacker's brooding, synth-driven soundscapes clashed perfectly with Miss Kittin's detached, knowing monotone. They rejected the polish of radio-friendly dance music, opting instead for sleek minimalism and hypnotic repetition, dripping in a seductive nihilism that would become the pulse of Electroclash. Their status as pioneers solidified with first album 2001, a glacial, pulsing record that felt less like an album and more like a coded transmission from a parallel world. Tracks like 1982 and Frank Sinatra became underground anthems. Miss Kittin's disaffected, spoken word delivery radiated irony and indifference, while the Hacker's pounding synths painted a vision of dystopian excess. It was a world where emotion was stripped down to its rawest form, where glamour and decay danced in unison beneath flickering club lights. Their influence seeped into modern electronic music's DNA, shaping the brooding atmospheres of techno, the shimmering cool of synthwave, and even the stark digital minimalism of Yeezus-era Kanye West. Their legacy isn't just in the music they left behind, it lingers in the smoky allure of underground clubs, in the cold pulse of a synthesizer, in the knowing smirk of an artist refusing to play by the rules. Miss Kittin and the Hacker didn't just define Electroclash, they embodied its sleek, stylish rebellion, ensuring its shadow would stretch across music for decades to come. Crystal Castles was another Electroclash act from Canada, and their music felt like a transmission from a collapsing world, glitching, distorted, and beautiful in its destruction. Their lo-fi synths screeched like dying arcade machines, their ghostly vocals trapped somewhere between euphoria and despair. Tracks like Crime Wave and Vanished pulse with an icy detachment that now echoes in the hypnotic, auto-tuned melodies of Playboi Carti, Blade, and Yeat. That same sense of digital decay, the feeling of something synthetic unraveling before your ears, has become a defining trait of modern underground rap. Today's artists, draped in cyberpunk aesthetics and drenched in reverb, channel the same eerie minimalism, twisting their voices into spectral transmissions over skeletal, synth-driven beats. Long before Electroclash's neon glow fully seeped into hip-hop, there were glimpses, sonic mirages where the two worlds collided in the late 90s and early 2000s. Timbaland's beats were among the first to carve out this futuristic space, his production on Supa Dupa Fly 1997 feeling almost alien in its approach.
My hips, big hips, so chai. See my butt, then my lips don't chai. Lost a few pounds in my waist.
The cold, metallic bounce, the glitchy, robotic drum patterns, it was hip-hop pushed into the digital ether, mirroring the synthetic coolness that would define Electroclash. By the time Miss E, So Addictive, 2001 arrived, Missy Elliott had fully embraced the sound of a world where rap and electronic music weren't separate forces, but reflections of the same avant-garde instinct. The Neptunes took this further, injecting their productions with an icy, synthetic funk that felt like a cousin to Electroclash's detached, mechanical allure. Kelly's Kaleidoscope 1999 shimmered with futuristic paranoia, while I'm a Slave for You 2001 dripped with the same sleek, erotic tension that pulsed through Electroclash clubs. Andre 3000's The Love Below 2003 danced in and out of this aesthetic, most notably with Hey Ya. Its jittery, synthetic rhythms wouldn't have been out of place in a Miss Kittin DJ set. Then came Kanye's Graduation 2007, where his obsession with Daft Punk and Electro House cemented a new era. And through it all, M.I.A. blurred every boundary, fusing Electroclash's raw, rebellious grit with hip-hop, dancehall, and punk energy. These moments weren't just coincidences, they were proof that hip-hop and Electroclash had always shared a pulse, both born from the urge to disrupt, to challenge, to create something entirely new from the wreckage of the past. Kanye would later release 808s and Heartbreak in 2008, and it felt like a transmission from the future, with cold, metallic synths, hollow drums, and a robotic detachment in Kanye West's auto-tune vocals. Stripping away the warmth of traditional hip-hop, Kanye embraced minimal, synthetic soundscapes that echoed the futuristic bleakness of Electroclash, especially on tracks like Welcome to Heartbreak and Robocop. While not an Electroclash album, 808s shared its ethos, rejecting hip-hop's typical swagger in favor of something colder, more alien, yet deeply personal. The backlash was immediate, but just like Electroclash, Kanye's daring move paid off. 808s laid the foundation for genres like hyperpop, cloud rap, and industrial hip-hop, blending electronic minimalism with rap and punk aesthetics. In hindsight, the album became a bridge between the avant-garde spirit of Electroclash and the next era of hip-hop, redefining the boundaries between human emotion and synthetic expression. Additionally, Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon saga merged hip-hop's introspective lyricism with icy, futuristic electronic textures, creating a nocturnal dreamscape that drew heavily from Electroclash's synthetic minimalism and robotic detachment. The first album, The End of Day 2009, featured brooding synths and pulsating rhythms reminiscent of Miss Kittin and The Hacker, with tracks like Day and Night and Pursuit of Happiness carrying a cold, dystopian eeriness. On Man on the Moon 2, The Legend of Mr. Rager 2010, Cudi deepened his electronic influence, embracing glitchy, robotic sounds and blending them with hip-hop's emotional storytelling. His melancholic vulnerability, combined with electronic-driven beats, created a space where hip-hop, electronica, and avant-garde aesthetics coexisted, much like Electroclash itself, paving the way for a new genre of music unbound by traditional conventions. Signed to Jay-Z and inspired by Kanye was M.I.A., who dropped her influential album M.I.A. in 2010. It is characterized by a chaotic, dystopian collision of hip-hop, industrial noise, and Electroclash's jagged, synthetic textures. The album embraced the cold, mechanical detachment that defined Electroclash, channeling its anti-establishment ethos through abrasive electronic beats and cyberpunk aesthetics. Tracks like Steppin' Up and Meds and Feds pulse with distorted synths and metallic percussion reminiscent of Peaches or Chicks on Speed, while XXXO fuses robotic pop melodies with glitchy futurism, mirroring the sleek yet ironic detachment of Electroclash pioneers. M.I.A.'s deadpan delivery and politically charged lyricism align with the genre's rebellious spirit, turning M.I.A. into an album that felt both confrontational and eerily prophetic. In its embrace of digital decay and hyper-digital textures, M.I.A. serves as a bridge between Electroclash's raw synthetic energy and the hyper-digital landscapes that would define future experimental pop and hip-hop movements. As the 2000s bled into the early 2010s, hip-hop's embrace of electronic soundscapes reached new heights, with artists drawing from the otherworldly aesthetics of Electroclash and infusing them into their party-driven anthems and experimental hits. LMFAO and Flo Rida, though more EDM-centric, channeled their kitschy, self-aware energy of Electroclash, injecting their music with playful, glitchy beats and an exuberant irreverence that mirrored the genre's rebellious spirit. Nicki Minaj, with Pink Friday, Roman Reloaded 2002, dove into glitchy electro beats on tracks like Come on a Cone and Bees in the Trap, evoking the cold, mechanized vibes of Miss Kittin and The Hacker while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of pop rap. These artists, though stylistically diverse, all tapped into Electroclash's audacious fusion of the synthetic and the human, helping to further weave electronic textures into the very fabric of mainstream hip-hop. Their willingness to experiment with otherworldly soundscapes and electronic beats made them key players in the genre's ongoing evolution, setting the stage for the genre-bending, genre-defying hip-hop that would continue to thrive in the years to come. Skrillex has been a pivotal figure in marrying the sounds of electronic music and hip-hop, particularly through his production work that blends dubstep, trap, and electro with rap. His breakthrough in the early 2010s, particularly with the massive success of tracks like Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, helped define the aggressive, bass-heavy sounds that would later influence hip-hop producers. Skrillex's collaborations with artists such as Kendrick Lamar on Humble and A$AP Rocky on Wild for the Night brought an electronic intensity to mainstream rap, allowing rap to explore darker, more experimental soundscapes. His use of complex sound design, glitchy effects, and massive bass drops introduced a new level of energy and excitement into hip-hop, creating a fusion of EDM and rap that would go on to influence countless producers and rappers alike. Skrillex's innovative approach helped hip-hop embrace electronic music not only in terms of production, but also in the live performance scene, where his high-energy DJ sets influenced the way hip-hop concerts and festivals were structured. But Electroclash reflected a movement that was both hyper-stylized and proudly DIY, while reveling in its own artificiality, as if the entire scene existed within a forgotten VHS tape looping endlessly. The genre burned brightly but briefly, fizzling out as quickly as it had arrived. Yet, its influence never truly disappeared. It seeped into the DNA of modern electronic music, hyperpop, and unexpectedly, hip-hop. Mainstream, underground, and everything in between began to fall under the spell of its cold, digital aesthetic, which continues to shape the sound of a new generation. In the depths of the underground rap scene, Electroclash's influence was not merely a trend, it became a manifesto for those who rejected the mainstream and embraced the shadows. These artists, much like wandering rebels tracing ancient graffiti on forgotten walls, discovered lost blueprints from past outsiders who had faced the same societal struggles. The outcasts, the drifters, the dreamers. Danny Brown, in his albums XXX and Old 2011 through 2013, ventured into a sonic wasteland where Electroclash's cold, metallic beats mingled with his high-pitched, cartoonish vocal delivery, a voice that echoed the genre's detached irony and self-aware humor. Tracks like Die Like a Rockstar and Kush Coma had the gritty, industrial feel of Electroclash's dystopian landscapes, mixing rawness with futuristic detachment. Brown's work, rife with chaotic energy and unflinching vulnerability, reflected the spirit of Electroclash in its most rebellious form, an embrace of alienation, absurdity, and brutal honesty in a world that demanded conformity. Then came Death Grips, the sonic anarchists who tore down every boundary in their path with the Money Store, 2012. Their raw, aggressive electronic production captured the dark, industrial heart of Electroclash, disjointed, frenzied, and uncompromising. Tracks like Guillotine and The Fever AA channeled the cold, mechanized aesthetics of Electroclash but injected them with an industrial venom that felt more like a battle cry than an artistic exploration. The music was as much a violent, cathartic purge as it was a blueprint for the future. Wailing synthesizers and abrasive rhythms fueled the duo's rage against the machine. Death Grips were the underground's messengers, excavating forgotten sounds from the depths and reassembling them into something wild and untamable. They took Electroclash's spirit of defiance and cranked it up to a fever pitch, opening the door for future artists to follow in their chaotic, boundary-smashing footsteps. Other artists who ran with the sound were Young Lean and the Sadboys, who have become legends in the evolution of cloud rap, in part by reinterpreting Electroclash's signature elements and incorporating them into their own atmospheric, melancholic sound. From the very beginning of his career, Lean's delivery, robotic and detached, echoed the icy, emotionally distant style of Electroclash artists like Ladytron and Fischerspooner. In his early works, such as Unknown Death 2002-2013, Lean merged the hypnotic, ambient synths that defined cloud rap with a more fragmented, electronic sound that nodded to the harsh, industrial edges of Electroclash. His robotic vocal delivery, which often floated above dreamy synths, seemed to blend perfectly with the glitchy, ethereal textures of Electroclash, allowing him to create a world of distant melancholy, where both the beauty and discomfort of the soundscape could coexist. This balance between cold, synthetic production and emotionally layered vocals became a hallmark of Lean's style, transforming his sound into something that wasn't just a fusion of genres, but a unique interpretation of them. As Lean's music evolved, particularly with Unknown Memory 2014, his use of Electroclash influences grew more sophisticated, allowing him to experiment with both smoother, more ethereal tones and jagged, glitch-driven beats. While his earlier work laid the foundation with this melancholic and distant feel, Unknown Memory revealed a deeper complexity in how he incorporated these Electroclash elements. Songs like Kyoto and Ain't No Comin' Back show a transition from dreamy synth landscapes to more fractured, glitchy electronic textures, blending the alienation and irony of Electroclash with the hazy, introspective vibe of cloud rap. Lean's ability to flow effortlessly over these jagged electronic soundscapes marked a significant refinement in his approach, as he moved beyond mere imitation of Electroclash's detached atmosphere and into a space where he could perfect his cloud rap sound while pulling from Electroclash's avant-garde, electronic backbone. By the time Warlord 2016 was released, Lean had fully embraced and transformed Electroclash's influence into something deeply personal, refined, and uniquely his own. The album's darker, more aggressive sound incorporated harsh, industrial beats and glitchy elements that felt reminiscent of Electroclash's raw energy, yet Lean's voice remained hauntingly detached and robotic, adding layers of emotional complexity to the music. Songs like Highway Patrol, Afghanistan, and Shawty You Know What It Do merged celestial, ethereal sounds with dissonant, jagged beats, creating a sense of tension and release that was the hallmark of Electroclash, but with Lean's own introspective touch. What once started as a distant homage to Electroclash's icy textures had evolved into a signature blend, where Lean seamlessly flowed over both smooth, dreamlike soundscapes and jagged electronic edges, further refining his cloud rap style while still acknowledging the genre's roots in Electroclash and its adjacent sounds. Through this evolution, Lee not only embraced Electroclash's experimental spirit, but also redefined it, making it an essential part of his genre-defying sound. Knight, Lovell, and Ghostemane stand as dark sorcerers within the modern underground rap scene, conjuring sonic landscapes that defy convention and blur the lines between hip-hop, industrial, and Electroclash. Knight Lovell's brooding, cavernous beats are steeped in a cinematic, cyberpunk aura that channels the cold, industrial power of Electroclash's darker side. With tracks like Dark Light and Still Cold, Lovell's deep, echoing vocals merge seamlessly with distorted, mechanized synths and booming percussion, creating an atmosphere both eerie and alien. These electronic textures don't just complement the gothic, haunting tone of his music, they serve as conduits to a parallel world, where ancient energies and futuristic nightmares collide. The industrial undercurrents in his sound bring a sense of relentless motion, a driving force that feels almost prophetic as it reverberates through the soul, conjuring the essence of Electroclash's cold, detached aesthetics while enhancing the cinematic nature of his work. Ghostemane, similarly, draws upon Electroclash's raw, mechanical energy to craft dark rituals that push the boundaries of rap and industrial music. His fusion of metal, trap, and electronic elements creates a pulverizing, otherworldly atmosphere, deeply indebted to the harsh, aggressive side of Electroclash. Ghostemane's music feels like a ritualistic summoning, with distorted, pulsating synths and jagged industrial beats that evoke visions of a dystopian future or a shadowy underworld. On tracks like Mercury and Flesh, the cold, robotic delivery of his vocals matches the twisted, cybernetic instrumentation, pulling listeners into a world of stark darkness where technology and human decay intertwine. The industrial noise and Electroclash-derived soundscapes act as a portal to this world, intensifying the raw, nihilistic energy that Ghostemane channels in his music. Together, Knight, Lovell, and Ghostemane wield the influence of Electroclash like mystics calling upon forces from beyond, enhancing the cinematic depth of their music and propelling their sonic worlds into realms that are unsettling yet profoundly captivating. Within the world of underground hip-hop, the influence of Electroclash is particularly evident in the work of Blade and Drain Gang, whose dreamy robotic vocals layered over icy synth-driven beats evoke the cold, synthetic vibe of Ladytron and Miss Kittin. Blade's deadpan, emotionless delivery feels like an extension of Electroclash's detached, ironic style. Meanwhile, Plug, a genre rooted in southern hip-hop, has evolved into cybernetic, neon-lit soundscapes, with artists like Yeat, Che, and LMFAO blending Plug's foundational rhythms with the digital futurism of Electroclash. Even Playboi Carti's Whole Lotta Red channels Electroclash's rebellious energy with glitchy, distorted beats and a punk-like delivery that embodies the genre's anti-establishment ethos. This wave of underground rap, with its embrace of distorted, alien soundscapes, mirrors Electroclash's exploration of the intersection between human and machine, rebellion and innovation. Ayesha Erotica's viral resurrection through TikTok and social media feels like the ultimate internet fever dream, glossy, scandalous, and dripping in artificial perfection. Once an underground enigma, her music now soundtracks the hyper-online generation's obsession with all things plastic, provocative, and painfully self-aware. Tracks like Vacation Bible School and Literal Legend pulse with the same bratty, synthetic energy that made Miss Kittin, Peaches, and Chicks on Speed so deliciously sleazy, robotic vocals, filthy lyrics, and a club-ready sheen that's equal parts ironic and iconic. She didn't just revive interest in Electroclash, she rebranded it in her own image, feeding it through a hypersexualized MySpace core filter and turning it into an aesthetic all its own. Now, her influence lingers over hyperpop, digital pop, and every cyber-drenched, overprocessed track clawing its way through the algorithm, making sure Electroclash's neon-soaked legacy lives on, one scandalous banger at a time. The current underground wave of futuristic hip-hop has embraced Electroclash's rebellious, synthetic grit and reimagined it through a rap-driven lens. Hyperpop artists like 100 Gex, Sophie, and Dorian Electra push electronic boundaries with chaotic, digitized production that echoes Electroclash's punk-infused defiance. Their music thrives on maximalist distortion, glitchy synths, and robotic vocal modulation, sonic hallmarks that align with Electroclash's DIY ethos and futuristic aesthetic. This aggressive, anti-mainstream approach has seeped into rap's experimental corners, where artists are bending genres and warping electronic elements into something unpredictable and exhilarating. Despite being its own movement, Hyperpop carries Electroclash's restless energy into the modern era, mutating its cold, synthetic textures into a more frenzied and emotionally charged form. Artists like Glaive, Midwest, and Eric DOA blend punk, electronica, and rap, injecting raw teenage angst into their hyper-processed beats. Their ironic, hyper-digital aesthetic mirrors the detached cool of Miss Kittin and the Hacker or Fischerspooner, but with vulnerability that Electroclash often rejected. Instead of nihilistic monotony, Hyperpop embraces volatility, using digital distortion as both a sonic weapon and an emotional outlet. TikTok initially saw the vision in 2020 during quarantine, stumbling upon a new wave of upcoming artists making ballads. While the two genres differ in tone, their shared spirit of reinvention, ripping apart old blueprints to construct something entirely new, ensures Electroclash's influence remains alive, subtly reshaping modern rap and pop in its own glitchy, neon-lit image. In the dimly lit corners of the underground, where nostalgia warps and reinvents itself, Snow Strippers, Nate Sib, and the Hellp are carrying the torch of Electroclash. Snow Strippers channel the reckless abandon of early 2000s club culture, distorting it into a fever dream of industrial beats and neon-drenched urgency, while Nate Sib dissolves into the haze, turning dance music inward, where vulnerability seeps through pulsating synths and ghostly auto-tuned confessions. The Hellp moves like a shadow between them, draped in post-punk's cold embrace, their sound echoing the alienation and allure of a distant, imagined past. Through their own sonic explorations, each of these artists unearths a piece of themselves, shaped by digital decay, late-night euphoria, and the echoes of an era that never quite died, only morphed into something more intimate, more unfiltered, and undeniably theirs. In a space where genres bleed into each other and nothing stays in place for long, Jane Remover, Lucy Bedroque, and Edward Skeletrix are three main figures who are taking influence from electronic music and pushing it into new territory. Jane Remover's Revenge Seekers is a rush of noise, hitting with raw emotion and chaotic energy, and already being seen by fans as one of the year's best releases. Lucy Bedroque's 2024 EP is another applauded project, while Edward Skeletrix's museum music leans into something colder and more abstract, each project pulling from the past but landing somewhere completely their own. These new age projects represent true artistry in a scene that at times can feel like a minefield, tiptoeing around music that doesn't innovate on previous influences at all, resorting to nothing more than mere nostalgia farming. It doesn't even feel right to use the word Electroclash anymore, even if some influence is present. The word barely holds shape, stretched and bent into something more open or experimental. Whatever this is, it's exciting, it's alive, and it's happening now. In these darkened corners of outsider music, a new figure has risen as well. An artist who moves like a shadow between the worlds of hyperpop, electroclash, and hip-hop. Two Hollis emerged from the depths of this shifting landscape, where digital chaos meets the raw power of underground rap. Hailing from Chicago, Two Hollis' entire world was made from the threads of sound. His father being a drummer for the band Tortoise, and his mother being Skrillex's manager, the industry was in his blood. Producing as an adolescent molded his youthful energy and early inspirations into an ever-evolving style that's completely his own. Much like the early Electroclash pioneers, warriors of sound like Miss Kittin and the Hacker, Two Hollis embraced a vision that defied convention. He merged high-octane, distorted beats with the glitchy vocal manipulations and punk-inspired energy that would lead him to become the pioneer of a new era. Two Hollis is from a melting pot of inspirations. His early work includes The Jarl and Finally Lost, projects that dive into distorted Chicago drill and melodic cloud rap with an adventurous medieval aesthetic. Despite being deleted, these projects remain beloved by the fanbase, remembered as chronicles of Two Hollis' journey before his rise. After changing gears and looking to advance, Two Hollis gave us White Tiger, Chief Keef and Drangang influence loud and clear while infusing it with Witch House. Adding that to his base of hyperpop's aggressive, chaotic energy and Electroclash's cutting-edge futurism made him ready for breakout. His ability to traverse the worlds of underground rap, dance pop, and Electroclash has made him a central figure in the rise of a new, genre-bending movement, his presence creating ripples that will echo through the next wave of sonic revolutionaries. As he continues to build his status with albums like Two and Boy, and now Star, he is the artisan of a new era. Electroclash, though it never quite broke through to mainstream prominence, planted seeds that would continue to sprout across the musical landscape, growing into the diverse and dynamic soundscapes we witness in modern hip-hop today. Its sharp, robotic detachment and synthetic grit, wrapped in a visceral, anti-establishment energy, carved out space for a new kind of hip-hop that wasn't afraid to be cold, unyielding, or alien. Underground pioneers like Danny Brown and Death Grips harnessed these elements, blending industrial textures and glitchy vocals with the raw energy of rap, creating art that felt at once futuristic and unapologetically real. As these influences evolved, they gave birth to a new wave, where hyperpop's chaotic beats and Plug's cybernetic sounds merge with rap's emotional depth, seamlessly weaving Electroclash's influence into the fabric of modern music. The influence of Electroclash on hip-hop now pulses with a quiet intensity, like a thread running through a complex tapestry, connecting past and present in ways that were once unimaginable. As the genres continue to intertwine, we find ourselves on the cusp of something new, a collision that promises to flip the script once again. With each new artist, each innovative track, the echoes of Electroclash grow louder, pushing rap into new, unexplored territories. The anticipation builds. What will the next chapter hold? How will the robotic, synthetic heart of Electroclash evolve and combine with the raw vulnerability and rebellious spirit of hip-hop? One thing is certain, the next time these two forces converge, they will shake the very foundation of music once more, turning everything upside down in ways only the outsiders ever dared to dream. A dream to mutate, to break its own rules, and to find freedom in the artificial.